Welcome back to our next step in our planning process. So we have already gone through the steps of creating a model and creating plans for consideration for our upcoming period, which in this case is 2024. And we were able to, in creating plans, take a quick look at the results that were projected from each individual plan. But now it's time to really dig into some of these KPIs, understand how the plans compare to one another so that we can start to hone in on what exactly we want to do for next year and what our overarching goals are. And also compare how these plans shape up as compared to the model, the historical period. So we're looking at a lot of information in one, but we can dive into all of that with a report. So coming to the reports page, when you first land, you'll have a prompt to create your first report. And for this one, let's just call it 2024 Plan Comparison. I can create a description here if I'd like. I'm going to go ahead and select the model that I want this plan to be based on. Please do note that each report is tied to a base model. And so when we create a report, it will be linked inherently back to the model that we've already created. And if we have multiples, there will be a way that we can essentially switch that between one another, but it's going to take a little bit of additional work after creating the first report. So just be mindful of which model you're selecting. In this case, we only have the one, but as we move forward in time, and if we want to recycle a report, we will have a way to do that. It just can't be changed retroactively because the model is powering all of those plans that are attached to it as well. Okay, so we'll then reach our selection screen where we have two sort of different options and different approaches. At the top of the screen, you'll see all of our report packs that have been pre-created for you. To save time, we have two different versions. The historical insights really focusing on what the historical model is telling us and kind of decomposing performance from the past, versus plan insights, which is comparing the various plans that we've created to one another and also to the past where we'd like to. There's also an option to look at all of that in one. So it kind of just depends on what the primary objective is, if you're really trying to establish some baseline learnings, or if you are diving right into the planning mode. So these plan packs, you'll see indicated by this little icon here that has multiple charts inside of it. By contrast, you can also add individual panels. So each of these chart types is a discrete setup with various KPIs pre-selected. And so if you want to do more of a start from scratch approach, you're welcome to select these. But for efficiency, what we will do is go ahead and pick this Plan Insights chart pack. We can always add more panels later, so it won't hurt if we just start with the fundamentals and then build from there as we need to. All right, so this pre-populated chart will have a lot of information. There's a little bit of an educational component. So it kind of talks about the way that our planning optimization works. It also establishes the role of the environment. The environment is quite influential on overall performance. And so we want to kind of understand what the ingoing information is for these plans. And then based on that ingoing information, we can make decisions about how we want to proceed. So the first thing we'll do is just kind of level set on the environment assumptions that were put into the plans themselves. You can see here, the historical model has distribution reflected, and then that distribution projection that I input in our planning section. And you'll notice, or you'll remember perhaps, that I had forecasted that my distribution would be going up a little bit in the middle of 2024. And so you can see that bit of a peak there. Couple of logistical notes. So you'll see each panel has this little settings button that flips the card over and gives you a lot of different viewing options. So you've got the name and the description already filled in. You can then also select the time aggregation that you want to look at. There will be various use cases for each, which we'll get into. I can display both the model and any plans that I want to. So I'll go ahead and show what that would look like. You'll notice that each of these plans has a slightly different projection line. And so as an example, in this green one, my 2024 budget scenario, I assumed that the distribution was going to stay pretty much flat to the prior year, whereas in my forecasted plan, I built in that assumption that it would actually be increasing. So just a really good way to remember exactly what I put in as my assumptions on the environment front. You can also, from there, look at the different factors that are included. In this model, we just have distribution, but if you had multiple environment factors, this would be the place where you could toggle those on or off. And then I can also just hone in on certain date ranges. So as an example, if I'm only really interested in what has happened since 2022, I can go ahead and make that selection, apply that, and you'll see now my chart has adjusted. So this little settings button is going to be the hub of where you can make a lot of the actions that you will want to for each chart. And then right next to that, we've got this 3 drop-down icon where you can download the data from this panel into a CSV, into an image. I can duplicate it and kind of play with it and work with it a little differently that way, or I can just remove the panel if it's really not part of my narrative. So as we start to get into the top line projections for the plan, what we can do is look again at the visualization type that makes the most sense. I think a bar chart is going to work well here. I am looking at a total 2024 plan, so let's keep that at yearly. And then I want to go ahead and select all of my plans for 24 for comparison. And now I get a really nice holistic view of what the investment, the contribution from that investment, and the total sales volume is for each of the plans I'm considering. Before I dig into what this is telling me, it's important to know there are a lot of different KPIs or key performance indicators that are available. That's here in the metrics displayed. The default metrics are going to be the ones that are typically most useful in helping you start to understand performance and start to tell a narrative, but you do have the drop-down option here to select any of these that you see in the list, and there are quite a few. So if you want to understand better what each of these mean, you can navigate up to the top here to your user profile, and you can check on the dictionary. So in the dictionary, we have really comprehensive definitions of what everything is. I'll kind of focus us in on this section here. So starting with contribution, which is really the main metric, the main performance metric of our platform, you'll be able to see this is a volumetric measure. It is available in 3 different time horizons. You can look at it from a same year, a 1 year, or an all year perspective. And then we have some translation leaps down to, rather than a sales volume metric, we have one that's expressed in revenue. So taking that contribution, applying your price per revenue and your discount rate, which is defined in your factors page, or we can go one step further and apply your margin. So this paradigm is going to exist pretty much across the board for all of our performance measures. We have multiple time horizons so that you can understand both the short and long-term impacts of marketing. And you have the ability to look at it at any level of granularity when it comes to profitability. So you can think about it as a pure, almost return on ad spend, a ROAS perspective. This would just be looking at it from a volumetric perspective, or you can translate that into internal revenue or internal profit. So this is a really good reference point to use. You also have the ability, if it's easier, to customize any of these terms. So let's say that contributed net profit in your business is called NPV. Let's just say that that's an established term that you already use in your business. I can go ahead and add that as a custom term. And when I save that, I will now have that alias reflect on all of my reports. So that is a really helpful way to align your internal stakeholders as well. All right, so as we kind of go down, we're going to continue to dig into the narrative that this particular plan overview is telling us. But really the main thing to take away from this first this first overview is that there are lots of ways to customize these panels. And when digging in, there are specific metrics that can answer really any of the questions that you may have.